We are not a policing function. We are a business enabler. We open opportunities. We find opportunities. We build relationships across the organization. We are true business partners, right? And we're not that sort of like bump along the way or check box along the way. Like, okay, got to take this to legal now. No, like we want people to come to us, not because we're legal, but because we are a good business partner and we're great problem solvers.
Welcome back to CZ and Friends, where we talk with legal leaders, technologists, and operators shaping the future of business and law. I'm your host, Cecilia Zanidi. My guest today is Allie Hartley, the Chief Legal Officer at SimplePractice. Allie's career is the story of choosing healthcare law and building within it. She started in-house at Sutter Health, where she spent almost 10 years, then went on to lead legal at a company called Favor and then Carbon Health. Today, she's helping scale SimplePractice. Along the way, Allie has tackled some of the toughest regulatory challenges in healthcare, hello pandemic, while also showing how legal can unlock growth, not just control risk. Most recently, she's made AI real for her team, saving them lots and lots of hours. So she and I got in touch about that. And she's super candid about leadership, the curveballs, the failures, balances, and perfection. And I remember when I met Allie at a Tech GC or now L Suite event and thought this woman really has her stuff together. So I'm not surprised to see how much she's succeeded. So in this episode, we'll talk about why Allie chose healthcare, what it takes to scale legal and fast growing companies, and what she's learned about leading with humanity. Let's dive in. Allie, welcome to the
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm super honored to be here and really excited to chat today.
All right, let's go. You've spent most of your career in healthcare law. So Sutter Health, Favor, formerly Pill Club, Carbon Health, and now Simple Practice. What drew you to healthcare? Did you know, like even before law school?
It's thanks the interesting question. So actually when I was in law school, I went to a law school, Boston University, that had a specialty, or you could sort of do this track in healthcare law. And I took my first health law class when I was there, and it just like I loved it. I loved every moment of it. I loved the humanity of it, where like you can really feel like you're having a contribution towards making health better for people while still sort of that focusing on that interest in the law. So after that first health law class, I just continued to take more and more classes in it and sort of did that track, that health law track at BU. And then, sort of followed the same sort of passion when I started a law firm, as most people do, a big law firm, and did like the way that I was at Reed Smith, and the way that they had set up their life care and health sciences group was that it did both sort of litigation and regulatory work and regulatory counseling. So I got exposure and transactional work, I'll say too. And so I got exposure to a lot of different things that really solidified for me that I, wanted to be on sort of that transactional regulatory side. And that's sort of what led to my role at Sutter Health. But I'll say I was always just fascinated by medicine and healthcare in general. It's such a huge part of everyone's lives, whether you're healthy or not. And really being able to be a part of that was fascinating to me, although I knew I didn't have the mind for medicine itself.
Wow, interesting. So were you pre-med or anything before law school?
No, no, I didn't think I guess there was a moment in time where I thought I could maybe go into nursing, but because I just like I'm very much a people person. And so I like those relationships that you see develop in healthcare. But yeah, the science part of it wasn't for me.
Okay. Well, it's not like you're shying from complexity though. So would you say, when you think about areas of law, funny story, I think I actually one of the investors in Allie's first company, she was a GC at as a friend and invest in healthcare companies and had told me, "Oh, hey, you should interview with this company." And I said, "You know what? I do not know healthcare at all. Like it is literally one of the things on this show. I like to have GCs of areas that I don't know." So what's unique about healthcare as a field? I think the complexity is so crazy high. But what is it, you made a career out of it, but say more about the field itself.
Yeah, so I think it's one, I always feel like I have job security because it's just
Yeah.
a constantly changing field and a really complex field. You're absolutely right. So what I think is so interesting about it is you have both a federal framework, when you think about HIPAA and some other sort of federal laws that oversee the delivery of healthcare, but at the same time, so much of it is driven at the state level. And so the complexity of trying to figure out, how many, depending on how many states your company might be operating in, spoiler alert, simple practices in 50. And so, really trying to make sure that you are understanding sort of how the laws play out across all the states, but then also incorporating that federal framework too. So for me, that sort of balancing that and trying to figure out what is the right approach, take maybe the most, complex and, restrictive state and apply that across the board, even when maybe you don't have to. So really that strategy around balancing the federal and the state frameworks is a really interesting thing to me for sure.
Do you do that? Do you take the highest common denominator in that scenario? So I'm in
Oftentimes,
California, recording this from California, and I
yeah,
always
yeah.
ask me about employment law questions. It's always like, well, it kind of tracks blue state, red state, but you get some weird exceptions, Texas and whatever. But how do you think about state law then? And how do you get the buy-in to get the company to follow that if that's your philosophy?
Yeah, so when it comes to licenses or when you're thinking about the delivery of healthcare to actual patients, right? And then also the licenses of people who are practicing healthcare, so that is their livelihood. Those are two areas that I feel like it's pretty easy to get people on board with not taking a ton of risk, right? Like we don't want to risk someone's license, right? Because if we do that, then they can't do their job anymore. And we certainly don't want to risk patients' health, right? So I think framing it in sort of that sense when you're needing to go a more restrictive route, which isn't always the case, right? Like, so don't want to imply that I'm not that we don't take risk and we're not open to risk. But when you're thinking about those two areas, I think it's easy to sort of influence leaders to understand, like, oh yeah, I get why we would need to do that over here because like an outcome may actually impact someone's life in a really negative way versus just sort of a business decision that might have a revenue impact or might have a, other sort of downstream impact where those things are, you can take a lot more risk on, right? And I think sort of navigating those two different areas when you're within the complex framework of healthcare, just being able to figure out like, okay, what is the impact of this law? What is the impact of that law? How does it impact how we think about how risky we're going to be or not? And I think that's always been a really fun part for me because it's just a million moving parts, right?
Yeah. So speaking of music moving parts, so healthcare, obviously I think the Affordable Care Act obviously came out in your tenure as a lawyer. The pandemic happened in your tenure as a lawyer. Telehealth happened. Like what? Pick one and walk us through kind of like I mean, obviously the job security point is well taken, but any one project stand out as like, okay, this is the big sea change, or does it just kind of always feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think specific to healthcare, and I'm happy to talk about AI too, because I think that is the biggest change we're all seeing in the
Amazing.
world right now, in our lifetimes probably. But specific to healthcare, I really think the pandemic was like such an interesting time for lawyers because you had an opportunity to take an unknown of what was happening. Like, what is this going to mean for the world? How do we navigate these things? Regs were coming out really fast and furious, and take all that like messy noise and distill it into a very proactive approach for your company. And I think, my approach as a legal leader has always been like, we are a business enabler. We are a partner that can sort of unlock opportunities for a business. And the pandemic really proved that for lawyers, right? Because we could understand, okay, do we want to go after a PPP loan? How do we navigate vaccines, right, within our employment base? How do we go from all in person to, all remote? And what are the risks associated with that, particularly when you're thinking about data security and privacy and things like that? How do we navigate? We're not in an office anymore and we don't want to pay the lease anymore. How do we navigate that? So, like, lots of different legal opportunities for legal leaders to proactively think about ways that are going to help your business manage this really uncertain time. And I think it really, like, for me, it was an opportunity to shine, honestly. I felt like it really was. Yeah.
Wow. So walk us there. So I remember like what is it like the New Yorker cartoons or the cartoons of like, it's a pandemic and the HR person is like beaten up effectively from like dealing with all this. But it sounds like that wasn't your experience. You did have the opportunity to shine. So paint us a picture. So it is, let's say March of 20 or June of 20. And where were you? What were you doing? And a lot of our listeners are folks that, aspire to be great legal leaders. Like what did you like physically do at that time and just give us a picture?
Yeah, it's so funny. I remember it so well. I'm sure you do too. But like, I remember sitting in the office on the Friday. It was March something, 17th or something like that. I
13th,
remember.
I think 15th. Yeah, I remember when they
Yeah, I
canceled the
remember
ACs.
being in the office and we all were like, okay, we're not going to come in next week. And everyone was like, see you in a couple weeks. Little did we know, like, we were not gonna see each other for a long time. So, like, that sort of, like, highlights, like, it was just so unknown. Like, everyone thought, like, "Okay, we'll be back in a week," or whatever. So we all went home that Friday. I can't remember when all the PPP guidance came out. I think it was maybe a month or the PP loans came out a month or so later. But I do remember very quickly thinking, "Okay, we need to figure out how we move our workforce from in-person to remote," very, very quickly, right? How do we get set up from a security standpoint? Make sure everyone's laptops are like, we know we can connect remotely and all this stuff. So, really, just like getting a task force together very quickly to create not only policies, right? Because, like, policies are policies, but making sure we can actually like implement them
Do them.
and
Yeah.
do them. So I do remember getting a task force together very quickly among like, finance, legal, HR, tech to like really put our minds together and think, okay, we got to move quickly on this. And I do remember that weekend being very busy. Like I remember working that whole weekend. And then I would say from there, really starting to think like I kind of put a different hat on and said, okay, what are our opportunities here? Not just like how do we navigate this, but what are our opportunities? How is telehealth going to change? Like, we were in that world, that healthcare world of telehealth. So like, are some of and we saw this, like there were all these emergency stays and emergency regulations coming out that actually opened up opportunities for us as a business to go out and do more than we were previously doing. Right. So I was really trying to encourage everyone to put on that hat of like, okay, don't look at this as just a messy time, right? Like, which it is. And we need to like react to all the things that are happening, but look at it as like, where are opportunities also, right?
Wow. I mean, I love that. Also, give us a little tutorial, right? So, okay, so healthcare is licensed by state. Dr. Joe is in Arizona. He's got a license in Arizona. Dr. Jane is in California, is licensed in California. So pre-pandemic, could they kind of Zoom doctor people in other states, or what was the what changed? You mentioned a stay of regulation. I vaguely remember this. I had a fractional client in the healthcare space, and I got a crash course in that. But from a kind of a legal team standpoint, what was happening, and how did you turn that into an opportunity?
Yeah, so there were some like sort of cross-state emergency licensing things happening. So pre-pandemic, you can and today, like you have to get licensed in the state where you're practicing, right? So you
Where the
can't
doctor is or where the patient is or both?
where the patient is, right? So like where the patient is, you need to be licensed. And so there were some sort of this like I'm trying to think of the right word. It was like sort of like collaboration among states where you could like very quickly get licensed in another state if you were licensed. Like your example of like someone's in Arizona and I'm in California. Like I could very quickly get licensed in Arizona if I'm licensed in California if the states agree on that, right? Or if a new regulation comes out. So monitoring those regulations was actually like a huge task in itself because like it was happening differently across different states. And so making sure we're understanding, okay, like this state's doing this now, this state's doing this now. Like how do we let our providers know that that's what they can do now? But I'd say in addition to that, one of the biggest things is that, Medicare, and sort of from a billing perspective, a lot of private and private insurance companies follow guidance from Medicare, right? So one of the big things that came out was previously that you were able to bill under telehealth, like you could bill for a like telehealth session. However, the previous guidance was that you had to have had an in-person visit first. Like you have to have an in-person visit first, and then you can move to telehealth from there. So that was really relaxed during the pandemic. So it opened up opportunities for providers to see new patients for the very first time over telehealth and then be able to bill for that, right? Because like it's one thing to be able to do it, right? Like there was no law saying you can't do it, but like you got to get paid for what you're doing.
Yeah, it's not illegal to eat it, but it's illegal to sell it, so it's kinda it's kinda the same thing, so
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, alright, so you came out, so you helped navigate, you're getting licenses in different states, you're seizing opportunities. Was there a moment where kind of the executive leadership team or the board was kinda like, "Yeah, Allie, you got this," or like you mentioned that it was an opportunity for you to step up, to kind of moment step out, stand out for you, that it's like, "Okay, yeah, I we got this."
Was there a moment? I don't know if there was a moment that someone told me that. I do remember just saying, I got this. Like, I
I
can do
love
this.
that. I love that. How did you cascade that to the team?
And I actually think like that's it was actually a big lesson for me now that I'm like pausing and thinking about it was that you don't have to wait for someone to tell you that you can do something or like I want to put you in charge of this or I want you to run this thing down. I think actually the best leaders are the ones who just take opportunities and run with them. And so yeah, I do remember it being like, all right, I just got I like I don't think I, like, practically thought, like, "This is my moment to shine," or "This is my moment to go do this," but, like, I just did it. Like, it was something that needed to be done, and so we did it, right? And I think that's a really if I could tell sort of younger lawyers that, like, don't wait for permission to do something that you see as an opportunity that can be an unlock or a value add or, something that you think is gonna be is a big risk that you need the company to understand. Like, don't wait for someone to tell you to do it. Like, do it. Right?
Exactly. No, that gave me the chills. There's a thing in startups too of like you can just do things. And I think the law firms, I love my time at the law firm. I was at Morrison Forster for 6 years, but they sort of teach you that you can't in some ways. It's like, that there's this hierarchy and that it's like you got to check on everything. And but that's good. And I think it teaches this sort of diligence and client service and other things. But I had that realization too. And I think it's just a leadership thing, even of transitioning of like, it's applicable in life too. And I think startups, I get people asking me, how did you decide to leave being a GC and become a found a company? And I said, I just did. Like,
Yeah.
you
I was gonna say, like, you're a perfect lesson in that. Like, you're just like, I saw an opportunity, I saw a need, and I just did it. Like,
did it exactly. No, it's a and the whole world. I mean, even Twitter was all alike that like anything you see, any invention that you see, somebody just did it. They're not smarter than you. I also get back to the Michelle Obama advice, and she says something. She's like, I have been in every room, and world leaders and great scientists and whatever. And like, she says something to the effect of like, they are not that smart, but like they are smart, but just as smart as you are. And so, yeah, no, I love that lesson. Switching a little bit gears a little bit to leadership. How do you encourage that on your team? And how do you build a team? You've been the first legal hire at various of your companies and had the opportunity to set the culture. So what do you do?
yeah, I think one of the things that I do a lot, and my team is probably really sick of hearing me say these things, but I really do try to drill in the culture of like, we are not a policing function. We are a business enabler. We open opportunities. We find opportunities. Build relationships across the organization. We are true business partners, right? And we're not that sort of like bump along the way or check box along the way. Like, okay, got to take this to legal now. No, like we want people to come to us not because we're legal, but because we are a good business partner and we're great problem solvers and we think about things from a different perspective and we look around the corner and anticipate things and then solve for those before you even know they're there, right? So, I think one of the things that I really do is just drill that philosophy into my team over and over and over and over. And because of that, like, I think they feel empowered to go out and build those relationships and make suggestions and, problem solve and do all that. I think, if there's one thing that I like learned along the way or would give advice on, it was just like, don't be afraid to make mistakes because like that's I think one of the things that holds lawyers back a lot is like we want to be perfect. We want to give the perfect answer. We're all perfectionists. I get it. Type A perfectionists. Like we want to give the perfect answer. We want to give the perfect advice. We want to solve for everything. Like beautiful bow, tie it up, send it out. Right. And I think that really holds in-house legal teams back a lot. So I'm really trying to push my team to be like, it's okay to make a mistake because the best lawyers are not the ones who don't make mistakes. They're the ones who make mistakes, overcome them very quickly, and then learn from that mistake, right? Like I think people like my view of like executive leadership is people actually really value and appreciate when mistakes happen because it means you're pushing the envelope. It means you're trying new things. It means you're being innovative. And the key there is then like admitting you made a mistake. Like don't try to hide it. Don't try to like bury it. Like admit there was a mistake, recover from it and learn from it and share those learnings, right? And I think like that's one thing I really try to push my team to do a lot as well.
I mean, the tying things up with a bow, it's like that
Yeah.
satisfaction of doing that. I'm the same way even now with
Yeah,
marketing.
it's hard. I have to tell myself that all the time, right? All the time. Like, we can't be perfect, can't be perfect, can't be perfect. And it's a really hard thing for like all the training we've all been through, right? Like, it teaches us that to like be perfect, have the great answer. And I think like it's really hard to move away from that. And so yeah, that's it's tough. And one of the things that I make sure my team knows is like I've got your back if there's a mistake, right? Because I think one of the hardest things is like, if I don't have the perfect answer, it's not tied up in a bow, I'm gonna get in trouble, or I'm gonna get,
Mhm,
like
mhm.
something bad is gonna happen, right? And I think really the important thing as a leader of that team is to like make sure people understand I got your back. Like, don't worry about that. Like, go be innovative, go push the boundaries. Like, I have your back on this, right? And we'll recover together, right?
Any you mentioned relationships. Any particular story to tell on that, either about yourself or a team member? Any, in the executive seat, commonly it's the CFO, but any partnership that's particularly strong for you, either at your current company or in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in the past, I can do both. In the past, at Carbon, I had a really, really great relationship with my CEO. And I think one of the reasons it was such a great relationship was he trusted me, right? Like, he trusted that I was going to do the job well and do the job that needed to be done and not over rotate one way or another. And it takes a while to build that trust. Like, that wasn't there immediately, right? Like, we it took some time, but I think that was a really great lesson for me. And now I look for that at new places is like, is that trust going to be there? Am I like, how is the legal function viewed by the CEO or by the company? Like, are we viewed as that value add, or are we viewed as something different? And so being able to know that that trust is there really empowered me to build the organization, build the legal team. And at Carbon, I also was the chief people officer. So like, build the HR team there as well in a way that like felt right for me, but I didn't feel like I had this sort of like person looking over my shoulder being like, "Oh, I don't think you're doing it right." Yeah. So that trust was really important. And then a simple practice, I would say, one of the great things is that like at this company that's been interesting to me is that, other than our CEO, the executive team is all fairly new because we went through a transaction, and so it's been really fun to all be sort of in the same boat of like learning the company together. It feels like a founding team 2.0, I would say, is like, we're all building the relationships together at the same time. And that's one of the hard things of like coming into a company, right? That's maybe been a more established company is like, oh, everyone has the relationships already. And now I'm trying to get in. So that's been a really fun thing to do and be a part of, and a little bit unique, I think, different than a lot of going to new companies. So really building that trust, I would say, is been key to me.
What's the if you can say more about Simple Practice? Was it private equity bought, or did it have IPO? You mentioned transaction.
Yeah, it was.
And what drew you to there, and how's it been?
Yeah. So, Simple Practice was part of a holding company that was a public company, which was then bought by a private equity firm and taken private. And then the subsidiaries of that holding company were all spun out as separate companies. So, Simple Practice, got spun out into its own separate company. And so then had to build out the management team from there. And the CEO was a part of the holding company. So we did get some sort of like, transition of like, historical knowledge and of true like deep understanding of the company. So it wasn't like we were just like a whole executive came in and we had no idea what to do. So that's been really, really fun to sort of, I would say it's like built like we feel like we're in founding building mode, but at a really healthy company. Which is
Good.
which is really nice, like, really nice. Like, you have it like, kind of has a startup-y feel to it, but it's not a start like, it's a very healthy company. So, that's
Great.
been a really fun, unique thing.
Interesting. Yeah. Other interesting and fun, or depending on your point of view. So you mentioned that you oversaw people, you chief people officer at your last company. A lot of CLOs and GCs do that for various reasons. What's your biggest advice on that? And do you want to do it again? You're apparently not doing it now. So what was any lessons learned or wisdom to impart from that?
Oh my gosh. My biggest piece of advice is hire really amazing leaders on the HR side. Like, I had 2 incredible leaders, like people I would work with in a heartbeat again. So if I would say like if I did it again, I would make sure I had those 2 people with me. 'Cause like sure, I can lead a function, but like I had not had any experience in HR. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap between legal and HR in terms of like employment laws and compliance and stuff like that. But like the actual sort of like leading the people function, like leading the actual people of the company, I had no experience in that. And so I very heavily relied on my experts. And I think that's one of the things that is really important for leaders to do is like, no, you're not an expert and you're not meant to be, right? Like I knew my, like when I was asked to take over that role, I knew my CEO knew I wasn't an expert in HR, leading an HR function. He knew that. But he trusted me as a leader and a person to actually like drive results and drive change or whatever it was he needed me to do. And so for me, that was like, okay, I can lead the function, but like I really need, I viewed myself as more of like an executive sponsor of that function, right? And I needed the really strong leadership to actually run the function itself. And so for me, it was like, I need people way smarter than me in these roles to do the work and to tell me how I should be thinking about this, right? And I could then sort of like help make sure strategy was appropriately communicated to them, help sort of drive like our roadmap or what we needed to do, unblock things for them, escalate things for them. And so that was how I saw my role, not being like the expert in HR. Of course, I learned a ton, which was really great and fun too. But yeah, for sure people smarter than me, I needed.
Good. No, I love that. I remember so clearly that moment when I first had a report that, that I hadn't done the job that they were doing. And it was, you know, exhilarating, but also I had to be very deliberate of like, your job is not to learn that thing. Your job is to help them be good at that thing. And
Yeah.
it's
And
it's a fun time. Yeah.
yeah, I'm doing it now too. I'm overseeing the cybersecurity function here at SimplePractice, and I've never done that. And like, yeah, it's I always love and welcome these opportunities because I do think it's a really great way to continue to always be learning. And that's something that I can talk about was like a big moment for me in my career when I got to a point where I wasn't learning anymore and I realized for myself I needed to always be learning. So I did I always welcome these opportunities, but now that I've done that over to HR, I did sort of learn that same lesson of like, I don't need to know how to do cybersecurity, but I need to know how to help them do their job better and make sure that it's like getting done in the way it needs to be getting done in the company. Yeah.
Anything on cyber specifically that you would advise GCs or CLOs taking it on today?
Get a great CISO.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, insurance has always been, I guess, you're in healthcare, so that's a big one. The risk management around that is always a kind of a perennial topic for GCs. Have you ever had a cyber incident in your career or something like that that
Uh,
sticks out?
Man, you're going to make me like jinx myself.
I know, right?
No.
Yeah, no, no. All right. Okay, question with Duran, right?
Yeah, no
Yeah,
major cyber incident. However, like we act as if there is always one around the corner, right? Like, and you kind of
have you
have
done
to.
like a tabletop and all those kind of things? Okay, cool. That's good. Awesome. Good. Well, okay. So let's talk about AI. So you are, so Allie is, and her team, full disclosure, are customers of GCAI, and have had a great experience, which is exciting, but more just generally. So tell us about kind of how you're using AI, how you rolled it out. And then, you mentioned some of that, either personality of lawyers and perfection and this sort of like diligence to a fault, which is great. But I think AI is in some ways you could be seeing contra to that. So how did you roll out AI? How are people experiencing it? And then these sort of, I guess, personality change management tips that you have.
Love this question. And please stop me if I'm talking too much because I could probably talk about it all day. So how I rolled it out, I think like I approached it with like there's a lot of unknown and fear around AI, right? Like people are worried it's going to take their jobs. People are worried it's going to be done completely wrong. They're worried like what does this mean? What does this mean? So I kind of wanted to like as I rolled it out to my team, I wanted to take a step back a little bit and be like let's just like play with it. Like, I'm not asking you to do anything different. I'm not asking you to do this or do that. Like, just play with it. So the first thing we did as a team was I actually, and sorry we didn't use GCAI for this, but we used various AI tools. I gave them a prompt and not a prompt, but I gave them a task, and it was come up with a menu for a cafe that is a mix of two worlds. So it can be like the human world and an underwater world, or the human world and a steampunk world, or whatever it is. Like, come up with a cafe. It should have like really fun, unique items that span both worlds. Get some pictures on that menu. It really to encourage them. And then we got together as a team and we shared. And it was like a huge variety of like, some people like had just like menu items and no pictures, and someone built a website for that cafe. Like, it was this huge variety of stuff. And it was really fun because we all got to sort of like, and I said, don't spend more than 30 minutes on it, and like really just try to have fun. Like, don't worry. This is not like when no one's getting like judged by this, right? So really tried to start it as like, this is a fun thing. Like, this is a fun thing that you can do something that you didn't know how to do otherwise and use AI to do it, right? I've never like been a graphic designer, but I had a lot of fun like trying to design pictures and like tweaking them. I spent more time just because I got into it and I had fun. But like, it was really fun to do that. And it sort of took that fear away from people of like, this, like, I was trying to shift from fear to innovation. Like, then that's how we think about AI, not as something scary, but as something that helps us innovate. And so from there, then we've been at every team meeting, we're sharing out, something someone discovered how to do differently through AI, or something that they did that took some like manual work off of their plate and now AI is doing it, or something that they're having AI do that they're checking, right? So great example might be like my security team has now built this really awesome prompt for vendor reviews. And so they're using AI as sort of that first step in a vendor review to go out and check, like, has that vendor had any, cybersecurity events? Has the vendor, they do all these things that previously, I think they told me used to take over like between 3 to 6 hours per vendor review. And now it's down to less than 30 minutes. And it's
Love
been
that.
so fun to see. Like, the team is like just like running with it. And so that's been really fun to see. And I think like for me, I've been really very, very deliberate about you should be thinking about AI as taking administrative tasks that free up your human mind, right? And that human mind may actually be taking a look at what an AI output is saying and tweaking it to like your voice or the way you want to think about things or the way you want to communicate things, or taking that AI output and just confirming, checking to make sure like the links are like the sources are correct. And that's generally like matches your judgment as a human, and then freeing up that time to do more deep thinking and more strategy work and more, problem solving and building relationships and all that stuff. So I'm really encouraging my team to like be human and let the AI do stuff that, feels more administrative and burdensome to you.
Love that. I mean, so many good threads to pull there. I think the fun thing there, there's this thing in tech that it's like going from toy to tool and all these technologies, the internet and everything like started off basically as toys or they didn't quite work or whatever. And like being very deliberate. But I love I mean, you mentioned like the care about people that it's like, okay, this menu idea is so much fun. I'm like, I have literally not heard it. I do advise people try it on something personal first. And we definitely see at GCAI people who were very facile with ChatGPT for their own stuff, recipes. We had one of our big users does all his kids, T-ball rotation and everything in ChatGPT. But then when they get to the legal work, okay, they need more, and then that's when they come to us and they do great. But it is this concept that you landed on that it's like a mindset and this sharing wins. Give us like just one more window. So fly on the wall at your team meeting. What's happening, and how do you run your team meetings in general? I mean, that's a good question too.
Yeah, I think what's been fun to see is we have some people on our team who are much more advanced in AI. So I told you, like, someone built a website. Like, I
Yeah.
was not like they vibe coded it. They're like whatever. And so like what's been really fun for me to see is those people who are a little bit more advanced, like actually educating the rest of the team on it. Like, this is what an LLM does. This is what it means. Like, this is what it's doing with data. This is what you don't need to worry about, right? Like, I think one of the biggest concerns about AI is like just a lack of education around what's happening with data and what does this mean and what is it remembering about me, and like, just that creates fear. And so what we've really been trying to do is like, I'm using sort of my power users and the folks who know a lot about AI to help educate the team on what is actually happening in AI. A great example would be like we were going through and my teammate was trying to say like doesn't remember things like outside of a chat, right? And so we went through this thing where like he wrote in the chat, he said like my favorite color is blue. What do you think about that, right? And then like later in the chat, he's like, what's my favorite color again? And it said blue. And then he opened up a brand new chat and he said, what's my favorite color? And it said, I don't know enough to know that what your favorite color is. And like that was eye-opening to people because they're like, it doesn't remember me. Like, it's not learning about me, and it's not, like, taking my personal information and, like, remembering it forever and spitting it back out later. So, like, helping address some of those and educate around some of those fears has been really, like, unlocking opportunities, and it's making people more open to trying new things and using it.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, on the GCI side, when we develop, we do get questions about memory, and I know ChatGPT, has rolled it out. But for me, I think as a lawyer, that's something that did make me skittish. Where my example, and this was like extreme, was I have kids, and I sometimes I use ChatGPT for personal things as opposed to GCI, as well as for math, right? So GCI doesn't have some of the tooling around the math part because it's not as relevant. And so I had been asking questions about essentially we were preparing for a funding round at the time. And I'd been asking questions about our growth rate and things, all very good. But at one point it came back and said something like, as the mom of a 5-year old, you should do whatever with your revenue. And I was like, oh my God, like that is not relevant. Get the heck out of here. Like, not cool. I don't know where you wrote that down, but like my 5-year old had nothing to do with this. I was like, that day, I came back to the engineering team and I was like, all right, when we implement memory, which we're working on a roadmap, like, don't ever say that somebody's having children or not is relevant to their revenue. Like, we can't. That is creepy AF. And so
Yeah, it is. And that's what people worry about for sure. And so, like, making sure, one of the biggest things that we've done as a company at Simple Practice is really making sure we're choosing the right tools, not only from a sort of trust perspective, a data use perspective, but also, frankly, an environmental perspective, right? Like, we're like, there's a lot of concern out there, rightfully so, around sort of the impact on the environment of these AI tools and models and all the, energy it takes to build them. Yeah, from a data perspective, from a trust perspective, and, from an environmental perspective, and I think and so we built, when we first started launching AI company wide, we put together a lot of guidelines around like, okay, third party tool use based on sort of this matrix of sort of like based on what are your tasks? What data are you inputting? What are you doing with it? Here's the type of tool that you can, and here are the features of that tool that need to be there or don't need to be there, right? So like, everything from like, oh, I'm just like researching very like non-confidential public information. Sure, go use Chat GPT for that, right? Like I'm asking about like, help me like come up with a fun team building activity for my team. That's fine. Use Chat GPT. But if you're like using, and we handle PHI, and so that's like we need to be extra, 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 triple, quadruple careful, right? And so like, if we are using PHI in an AI tool, all these like a whole laundry list of additional things need to be true with that AI vendor for us to use that.
Well, and I think that gets back to the kind of caring point around, so the users of Simple Practice are me and you and everybody, right? So, you literally have a consumer, right, where there's an interface to actual patients. And so thinking about it that way, that like, I always was really big on like, when the FTC had the privacy rules to kind of, pre GDPR around like reasonable expectations and what do people believe. And I thought that was one of the most fun things to do as product counsel was to like to do that. Now, I think since then, and obviously HIPAA, and I think healthcare is more technical, but that's like this kind of like building your judgment around that has been a big thing in my career. How do you build judgment?
Well, I think we start with trust. Like we need to have like our company needs to be trusted by our customers and by their patients, right? Like first and foremost. And so if we don't have that trust, we don't have a company. And so when you start there and then you are building features and building protections and building whatever that you need to build within the product to actually like deliver the services we're delivering as a company, if you start from that place of trust, it's a lot easier to build that over time because everyone's on the same page about like we don't want to do something that's going to break that trust. right? Like, we don't want to do something that's going to ultimately result in someone feeling like, wow, you really like screwed up there with my data, or you did the wrong thing, or you said you were going to do this and then did something totally different. And
Yeah, but, like,
so,
do what you say what you do. It's always, like, such
yeah,
like, a
totally. And so much of that is like helping translate, complex like legalese into very normal standard language, right? So when we launched our first AI product at SimplePractice, we did an addendum to our terms of service, as most people do. And not only did I like draft up, or my team and I draft up this like legal document, but we put a summary at the very top of it that was like, what does this mean in plain English? And that was really important because people can interpret when you have a customer base that is not legal. Most people have customers that are not legal, or unless it's like a big enterprise B2B business where the legal teams are talking to each other. Like for us, like our customers are therapists and they're not trained lawyers. They're not trained business people. And so we wanted to make sure that they understood what we were committing to in very plain English, right? Because if we didn't, they might start making some assumptions like, oh, this provision says this. And so that means you're trying to be sneaky here or whatever.
well,
So
and I mean, therapy is literally the most like, the highest risk use case around AI, right? I mean, you're
we,
reading
we
New York
hold
Times articles and things, and it's like, the
100%.
sort of some of the personality aspects obviously one of the highest opportunity areas too, obviously,
Yeah.
in terms of, like, the loneliness epidemic. I talked with an AI leader, and he said that in terms of therapist intake, so I don't know if Simple Practice does this, but he said that the amount that people will bare their souls to an AI is actually even higher than to a therapist. What do you think of that? Do you think that's
So we don't have any we don't have so our platform is built for therapists, and so we don't directly interact with the patients or the clients themselves. But like what our goal is as a company is to take administrative burden off of therapists so that they can do what they do best, which is deliver care to their patients, right? So we are, providing administrative support, I would say, on the back end for them and sort of their partner and their business partner along the way, so that like we do believe actually that therapy is human centric, but that AI can be a very powerful tool to help drive that therapy and help drive that human centric interaction between patients and their therapists. But like we do believe that therapy is human centric. But certainly, yeah, we've seen out there like I think therapy is the highest use case of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
People are going to that, and it's a little bit scary, right? And probably a little bit dangerous, but I think we are seeing some regulations coming out around this. So Nevada and Illinois just both came out with laws sort of regulating the use of AI in therapy. I think New York has a law on AI companions, and so I think we're starting to see some movement
Yeah.
on this.
It'll be interesting. I think it's like, I think obviously I think a lot about this in the context of lawyers and like what happens. And then like, okay, so for therapy, it's like you increase I guess the amount of people that can have access to at least some form of therapy. There's also really interesting opportunities around like, I know there's some companies succeeding with like diabetes management where it's basically like you need to be reminded and you need to be able to ask things and have kind of expert at your fingertips, and then kind of escalating that with a practitioner kind of above it. So lots of interesting opportunities. I'll be curious. I think I'm gonna set a reminder to do this podcast again in 3 years. So mark you're gonna be the first repeat guest in 3 years, and we're gonna talk about like therapy and AI. So that'll be super fun. Awesome. So let's go to basically the some closing wisdoms. Allie, your perspectives on AI, healthcare, leadership. I mean, super inspiring. I'm literally like, can I be Allie when I grow up? But if you could, I'm serious. I mean it.
Well, can I say something actually to that? Which is something that you said in the beginning that made me laugh, which was like, "Oh man, she has her shit together." Like this is something that I actually had a like skip level with one of my teammates the other day, and she was sort of saying the same. She's like, "How do you do it? Like, what is like?" And my reaction was like, on the outside, yeah, it may look like and it's not just me, all these leaders, you, Cecilia, like, it may look like, how on earth is she a mom? Did she, like, is a founder of a, like, tech company? Like, what is happening? And I just sort of, I looked at her, I was like, it may look that way, but, like, literally, I brought my son to school without shoes the other day. Like,
Been there. Been there, done it, or mismatched views, done that one too.
It is not like truly, like,
Aw.
I think that we all and I think we need to share those stories, honestly, because I think it's so hard, particularly for women to, like, you know I'm gonna back up a little bit and say, like,
Yeah,
one of the
like chink
reasons
in the
that I
armor, right? Like a chink in the armor, you don't admit it. No, I'm
totally.
the same,
Like,
and I
I do
remember.
not have it together. I do not have it together, and I am not like, like, I love that you said you wanna be me when you grow up, but, like, why? Like, I was like, and I think this is one of those things where it's like, I always, like, oscillate between, like, what I'll say is, like, owning my power and being, like, really proud of, like, everything I've done in my career and, like, all, like, the work that it's taken to get here, and yeah, I am really proud of that, and I think it's
Good,
awesome. But
good,
I
I love
also,
that.
like, want people to know, like, it is far from perfect, and I mess up all the time, and I do things wrong all the time, and I, am I an awesome mom? I would like to think so, but I don't do it right all the time, and I don't believe that there ever is this, like, idea of work-life balance, I don't believe that, like, it's always this perfect 50-50 scenario. What I do believe is, like, you find a way to navigate when you need to be more work mode and less mom mode, and more mom mode and less work mode, and taking advantages of those opportunities when, like, maybe things are a little bit quieter at work, and knowing, like, okay, this is my opportunity to, like, be more into, like, family and, like, take an afternoon off and go to my kids' sports games or whatever it is. And I think it's really important that people understand and not try to put this, like, undue pressure on themselves to be perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's also like, I mean, I think what you said too, that like to take that moment to reflect in your pride too, though, it's okay. Like I had, funny enough, since you work for a company that sells a therapist, with one of my kids, I had through the law firm, they had basically that you could see a therapist like 6 sessions, and it was like included as part of like your benefits. I think it was just works, or something, I forget what it was. Anyway, I did it, even having never gone to a therapist. I went to one. It was in Palo Alto. It was pre-pandemic, and I remember I walked into her office, and we were introducing each other, and she said something like, you clearly have your stuff together. Like something to that effect, or like you're so put together. Cause I was like, I had like whatever my law firm, kind of Navy slacks, whatever. And I literally still remember it. Like, it was 13 years ago, actually, probably, maybe 12 years ago, because it was postpartum with my 13-year-old. Is 13 today. Anyways, and it left an impact on me of like, yeah, give yourself some credit, man. Like, I mean, that's the other thing too. Like, love everything you said. This has been so much fun. And yeah, so in terms of anything else, any book, podcast, or resource that's meaningful to you that people should have a listen to?
So I would say, like, really love Mel Robbins. I don't know if people listen to her a lot, but I really love her like a few things that she does. One is really this idea of, like, let them let me. And what that really means is, like, let them believe this, or, like, have their opinion about this, or think this about that. Let me, like, control the things that I can control. And this is, like, a concept that I'm now able to, like, say it and let them let me, but, like, I've really lived a lot of my life trying to master, and I will say I've far from mastered it, because it is really hard. Like, it's hard to not care about what other people think about you or whatever. But what I've really tried to master it in the sense of is, like, control the things that you can control and let the other things go that you can't control. And I coach my kids' water polo team, and I've been coaching for the last, like, 4 years. It's a local club program, it goes year-round, and so one of the things that I really try to do with these kids is not just teach them, like, water polo skills, but really teach them, like, life skills, and so they hear me talk about this concept a lot of, like, what can we control? Okay, we can't control what a ref is gonna act, like, what they're gonna call and not call. We can't control how, like, physical the other team is gonna be, but we can control how we play our game, how we react to what the ref does and what the other team does, and really just, like, focus in on knowing what we can do and can't do. And I think that really just, like, that concept applies across life, professional work, like, what can I control, what can I not control? And, like, how do we really hone in on the things we can control? So I would say, like, it is Mel Robbins has named this sort of concept as "let them let me."
Let them let me. Done. I love that. All right. This is amazing. Thank you so much, Allie.
Problem. Thanks for the time. It was so great to do this. Thank you.
Really fun. Made my day. Awesome. So that was my conversation with Allie Hartley. She's a CLO who's redefined what it means to lead in healthcare and tech, and dropped some incredible, pearls of wisdom in our conversation. From choosing a mission driven field to building compliance, enabling growth, showing how AI can transform leadership and making it fun. Her story has just been a masterclass in combining kind of strategy with human leadership. If you enjoyed this episode, follow CZ and Friends wherever you get your podcasts or at gc.ai/podcasts and subscribe to our newsletter for more stories and insights from legal leaders. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.